This is an episode that I've been looking forward to and dreading doing at the same time. And the reason why is because this artist is my favorite artist next to the Beatles, and you know how much I like the Beatles. This artist is Neil Young. He's had an amazing career and he's still going. How do you start to talk about Neil Young? How do you start to evaluate his music? That's a tough one. But what I've decided to do is concentrate on just 10 of his albums. Now, I'm sure some of my picks are going to be controversial. I remember I saw Neil Young back in the days of the Buffalo Springfield in a barn outside of Chicago. It was amazing. They blew me away. I've seen Neil Young solo many times, including that memorable Royce Hall concert, which he's now putting out as part of his archive series. I've seen Neil Young in Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young a number of times. I just think he's one of the most incredible artists, and he can be a little contrary. He follows his muse all of the time. But one thing you can say about Neil Young, this man is never boring. In this episode, I'm just going to concentrate on Neil's 41 studio albums and one of his archive release albums and squeeze them all down to my top 10. You know, as Neil sings in his song, he's seen the needle and the damage done. Now, he's talking about drug abuse. But let's turn that to a turntable and let's see what damage we can do when we drop the needle. Singer, songwriter, acoustic guitar player, blazing electric guitar player, Neil Young is an extremely talented musician. So now I'm going to rate my top 10 Neil Young albums. Ready? Here we go. At number 10, Living with War. This is Neil's 27th studio album, released in 2006. Neil becomes a protest singer full on. He said the Iraq War hit him really hard, and he was waiting for young musicians to start writing protest songs. Nobody did, so he did. This is an album that Neil would like you to listen to straight through. He says that's the way he recorded it, and that's the way it should be listened to, as each song builds the emotion from the previous one. It starts with After the Garden, and then there's the title cut, Shock and Awe, Families, Let's Impeach the President. Young recruited Crosby, Stills, and Nash to tour with him in support of this album. And when they would play Let's Impeach the President, at some shows in southern states, the audience booed and a lot of the audience members walked out. They just kept a rockin'. I also like Looking for a Leader, Roger and Out, and the closer, America the Beautiful. It took a Canadian to say what was on many Americans' minds about the Iraq War. Okay, let's go to number 9. In 1994, Neil releases Sleeps with Angels. This is Neil with Crazy Horse, the band that always sounds like it's just about to get really good, when it is, in fact, very great. This album got a lot of notoriety for the title track, Sleeps with Angels, which Neil wrote after Kurt Cobain's suicide. That's because Kurt had quoted Neil's song, My, Hey, Hey, in his suicide note. But the rest of the album was actually recorded prior to Cobain's death. I certainly like the title song. Then there's My Heart, Drive By, Western Hero, and A Dream Can Last. All right, now let's go to number 8. And I'm sure many of you are going to disagree with this pick, because this is not a particularly popular Neil Young album. Released in 1982, it's Trans. I like this album, and yes, it's pretty much unlike any other Neil Young album. That's because Neil wrote a lot of it because of his son, Ben. Ben has cerebral palsy and as a result cannot speak. And Neil went, yeah, but I know he's trying to communicate and I wish there was a way that we could break through. And he actually tried that he got involved with Lionel Trains, you might remember. And he tried that because Ben was fascinated by this huge train set that Neil had established. And he built controllers so that Ben could actually control the trains. But back to Trans, the album. As I said, he was sure Ben was trying to talk to communicate, but he couldn't understand what he was saying. That's what the sound of this record is like. Neil uses a vocoder to change his voice and synthesizers. Interestingly enough, this album and the next one, Everyone's Rockin', were the basis for Geffen to sue Neil Young, saying he was putting out records that didn't sound like Neil Young. The suit was eventually dropped. Now, I'll grant you it's a strange album, but as I said, I like it. Take a listen to Computer Age, Transformer Man, Little Thing Called Love, and the weird remake of Mr. Soul. Neil Young achieved worldwide success with the album Harvest, and he couldn't handle it. Now remember, this is from the guy who wrote the song Mr. Soul so many years ago, which was a reflection on fame way back then. But this was astronomical amount of fame. Neil has said that after the big hit of Harvest, he decided to leave the middle of the road and head for the ditch, where the ride wasn't as smooth, but he met more interesting people. The album I'm going to pick at number 7 is Zuma, and this is the first album to be released after 3 albums of Neil's, which are now referred to as the Ditch Trilogy, a dark period, and those albums are Time Fades Away, On the Beach, and Tonight's the Night. And none of those albums make my top 10, and I'll bet I'm going to get some comments about that. But let's go back to Zuma. Zuma comes out after this dark period. The album contains some great songs like Don't Cry No Tears, Pardon My Heart, Drive Back, and the amazing Cortez the Killer. If the album only had that one track on it, it would still make my top 10 Neil Young list. Now, I'll grant you, my number 6 pick is also a little bit strange. In fact, it wasn't even released as an album until 41 years after Neil had recorded it. And the album is Hitchhiker. In 1976, Neil recorded a batch of songs, and all the songs that are on the album Hitchhiker were recorded in one night. However, the record label said, yeah, well, that sounds like a demo. You need to go record it with a band. So this album took 41 years, as I said, to be released. But it was worth the wait. Right off of the bat, we get Pocahontas and Powderfinger. And then 2 previously unreleased songs, Hawaii and Give Me Strength. And many songs that ended up on later Neil Young records like Ride My Llama, Hitchhiker, and Human Highway. If you want to hear Neil Young in a burst of creativity, remember all these songs were recorded in just one night, check out Hitchhiker. And before any of you say, you're just living in the past, Bernie, my number 5 Neil Young record was recorded just last December. It's Neil with Crazy Horse in a barn. And this is the loosest that Crazy Horse has been in a very long time. Niels Lofgren has come back. This is a great album. Songs include the hard-rocking Heading West, a story about Neil and his mom moving across Canada after Neil's dad left them, and he sings how Mommy bought him a guitar. Then there's Canarian, where he sings of being of all colors, says he's American, but he came from Canada, so he's a Canarian, and he sees changes coming to this land. And his guitar just wails on the ending of that song. The Tender Shape of You. Human Race, which contains the plaintive line, who's going to tell the children of destiny that we didn't try to save the world for them? And then there's nice piano from Neil on Tumbling Through the Years. And then there's the 8-minute Welcome Home, where Neil's guitar work is just stunning. The album ends with Don't Forget Love, certainly a sentiment we all need now. Well done, Neil and Crazy Horse. Well done. Neil Young recorded 2 albums, Ragged Glory and Ark, and then went out on an extended tour that almost cost him his hearing. So he decided for his next album to go a little bit more mellow. Harvest Moon was released in 1992. It reached number 16 on the charts. Great songs here. The lead-off, Unknown Legend, which Neil has said was about how he met his wife Peggy. I like From Hank to Hendrix, Harvest Moon, Such a Woman, and Dreamin' Man. Harvest Moon was released in 1992. Now we get down to the top 3 Neil Young albums, and this is going to get really tough. But for number 3, I'm going to pick Neil's second solo album, the terrific Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere. This is the first album with Crazy Horse and was recorded in 1969. This album is a marked contrast to his first solo album, which was very polished. This album is not. It's raw, but it contains some songs that he continues to play live even now. Great songs like Cinnamon Girl, Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere, Down by the River, Cowgirl in the Sand. Neil says he wrote all those songs in one day when he was sick in bed with a very high fever. Feverish rock and roll. For number 2, I'm going to go with Harvest. Now, this was recorded in 1971, and after Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young had broken up, Neil decided he really wanted to make a country-feeling type of album. And boy, did he ever with Harvest. It made him a megastar before, as I said, he decided to go into the ditch. I like every single song on this record, but to single out a few, we got to pick Out on the Weekend. The title, Harvest, A Man Needs a Maid, and the big hit, Heart of Gold. And of course, Are You Ready for the Country, Old Man, Alabama, and, as I mentioned before, The Needle and the Damage Done. Like I said, Needle and the Damage Done was recorded in Royce Hall at UCLA in January of 1971, and I was a student at UCLA at that time, and I went to that concert. I remember it like it was yesterday. And now we reach my number 1 Neil Young album, and it has to be After the Gold Rush, recorded in 1970. Legend has it that Neil started writing this album to be the soundtrack for a movie. The movie was never shot or released, and the script has been lost. Thankfully, we have this amazing album. When the album came out, I was studying at UCLA, and when I went to UCLA from Illinois, I took a 12-string acoustic guitar with me so I could impress my friends. And in fact, this is the same guitar. It's out of tune right now, and the action is so hard that I can hardly play it. Now, my good friend Brad Pico, who was the bass player in our band, The Darkness, which we've talked about before, he taught me how to play Neil's Tell Me Why on the guitar. Thanks, Brad. That was a great gift. When I got back to LA, I had some friends living in Topanga Canyon, in fact, not far from Neil's house. And I would go up there every chance I got. And I would always bring my guitar, and I'd always sit there in Topanga Canyon under the stars playing Tell Me Why. Heck, I even had a fringe jacket just like Neil's. I think I was trying to channel Neil Young. All of these songs in this album are just magical. Besides Tell Me Why, there is the amazing After the Gold Rush, Only Love Can Break Your Heart, Neil's cover of Old Lonesome Me, Don't Let It Bring You Down, Birds, When You Dance I Can Really Love, The Tender I Believe in You, and the joyous Cripple Creek Ferry. If Neil Young had only ever recorded one album in his entire career, this would have been enough. All right, let's recap. Here are my top 10 picks of Neil's studio albums and one from the archives. At number 10, released in 2006, Living with War. Number 9 is Sleeps with Angels, released in 1994. Number 8, Trans, came out in 1982. Number 7, Zuma, comes out in 1975. Number 6, Hitchhiker. Number 5, one of his new ones, Barn. Number 4, Harvest Moon in 1992. Number 3, Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere in 1969. Number 2, Harvest in 1971. And at number 1, After the Gold Rush in 1970. That's my top 10 Neil Young studio albums. Now, in the comments, leave me a list of ones you think I should have included and then ones I should have not included. I'd love to see what you think. Neil is such an incredible talent, and I actually had the pleasure of interviewing him at the Slam Dance Film Festival, which I talked about in a previous episode. Thanks for watching. In a future episode, I'll try to rank my favorite Neil Young live albums. That should be a bit of fun. In the meantime, keep a rockin' in the free world. Yeah, I had to change that closing in honor of Neil. If you liked this episode, hit the like button, and you can also leave me a comment down below, and I'll respond to you. If you subscribe, we'll let you know when future episodes come out.